Welcome to Peri Solutions. In today's video, we're going to talk about the circle. We're going to talk about the formula that we use when we need to calculate the circumference of a circle, and we're also going to talk about the formula that we use when we need to calculate the area of a circle. But before we start, if you're new to my channel, please make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any new videos. So we're just going to start with the circle here. So with the circle, we've got the center of the circle, right? And any line that will pass through the center of the circle from one point of the circle to any other point in the circle through the center, right? That line, we call it the diameter, right? And then any line from the center of the circle to the circumference, right? Or to any point along the circle. That's what we call the radius of the circle, right? So something that we have to know is that for any circle, the ratio of the circumference over the diameter will give us the pi, right? In pi, this is just a constant number, right? Which is an irrational number because it is approximated to be 3.142, right? So it is an irrational number. It cannot be expressed as a fraction. So I'd rather just use it as pi. Right. So now for calculating the circumference of a circle, right? Circumference of a circle is given by pi d. So by pi d, we're simply saying pi times d being the diameter. Right. And remember, pi is just a constant number which you can easily punch in your calculator, or you can assume it to be 3.142, right? Or we can get the circumference as pi 2 pi r, right? Why 2 pi r? If you take a look at this relationship, yeah, we're saying that the radius is from the center to the circumference, and then the diameter is from circumference to circumference to the center. So this implies that the diameter is twice the radius, right? So in place of d, if you put 2r, we get 2 pi r. And then for calculating the area of a circle, we use the formula pi r squared, right? And if we wish to write it in terms of the diameter, we would say pi d over 2 squared, which is pi d squared over 4, right? But of course, it's much simpler to use this one rather than this one, right? So now let's attempt these questions. Number one requires us to find the perimeter and the area for each of those shapes. So for part A, right, for number 1A, for the perimeter here is simply the distance right round, which is the circumference of the circle. So we said circumference is given by pi d, and our diameter there is 10. So 10 centimeters times pi, that would be the perimeter. And of course the area would be pi r squared, right? R being half of 10. So 5 squared, which is 25 pi square centimeters. This would be the area, and then 10 pi centimeters will be the perimeter. Now for part B, we've got a semicircle, because of course the whole circle would be something like that, but we've got a semicircle. So for calculating the perimeter, we shall say the circumference of a full circle plus that's 20 centimeters, right? So this is now number 2. So this is now number 1b. So we're saying perimeter is going to be given by the circumference of half of a circle, which means this is half pi d, then plus the 20 centimeters, right? And then pi d is going to be 20 20 pi over 2 plus 20, which is just 10 pi plus 20. And we can further on simplify this to 10 pi plus 20, that will give us 51.4. So this is equal to 51.4 centimeters. This being the perimeter. The area, we're just going to say, since this is a semicircle, area, we're going to say half of pi r squared, right, which is half pi times r. If the diameter is 20, the radius definitely will be 10. So 10 squared, which is 100 pi over 2, to give us 50 pi. And if we simplify 50 pi, we'll get a result of 157.0 square centimeters. This is what we get for part B, right? And then now moving on to part C, right? Finding the perimeter, we shall say the circumference for this quarter of a circle. Because remember, the full circle will be something like that, then like that, then like that, then like that. So we shall say the circumference for a quarter of a circle plus 7 centimeters plus 7 centimeters. And of course, this will be our center. Means that the 7 centimeters is the radius. So we shall say P for number C. We're saying P being the perimeter. It's going to be quarter of 2 pi r, then plus 14 centimeters. 7 plus 7 to get the radius being 7. We're saying 7 times 2 pi, that's 14 pi over 4 plus 14, which we can simplify to get 14 pi over 4 plus 14. That will give us 25.0 centimeters. So this is the perimeter of this shape. And of course, the area would be simply a quarter of pi r squared, which is a quarter pi of 7 squared being 49. This can be simplified to 38.5. So 38.5 square centimeters would be the area, would be the area of the shape, right? And then now moving on to part D. So now for part D, allow me to erase this part. Right. So for part D, we're required to also find the perimeter. So the perimeter for part D is going to be given by the circumference for this quarter of a circle. Because remember, the full circle would be here. This is the quarter of a circle I'm talking about, right? So the full circle will go on like that. So we just want that part of the quarter of a circle. Then we shall add the 10 plus that 10. So if this is 10, then this is also 10, implying that this definitely would be our center. So this 10 is the radius, 10 radius. So for part D, perimeter P is given by a quarter of 2 pi r to get this, right? Then we're going to add 20, right? 10 plus 10, right? And this will be equivalent to 1 over 4 of 2 pi, radius being 10, that's 20 pi, right? Plus 20, which is 5 pi plus 20. And we can simply punch this in the calculator. 5 pi plus 20. And we get a result of 35.7. So 35.7 units would be the perimeter for this shape, right? The one in red. Then the area now is simply saying that if we calculate the area of this way, it will be 10 times 10, which will give us 100. Then we subtract it from the area of this quadrant or a quarter of a circle, we get this area, right, of the shape that we want. So we shall say minus 1 over 4 pi r squared. R squared, that's 10 squared, which is 100. This would be equal to 100 minus 25 pi. So if you punch this in the calculator, 100 minus 25 pi, we get a result of 21.5. So this would be equal to 21.5 square units, right? Square units. So that's the area for this shape. Right, now let's move on to number 2. So allow me to erase this part. This one in blue, and this one in black as well. Okay, right. So number 2, a circle has an area of 15 square centimeters. Find its radius. So of course, we know that if A is given by pi r squared, we're saying 15 is equal to pi r squared. And then making r the subject of the formula, we are dividing both sides by pi, such that r would be equal to the square root of 15 over pi, okay, which is equal to 15 over pi, then the square root of that will be equal to 2.19. So 2.19 centimeters would be the radius of the circle. Now moving on to number 3, a circle has an area of 16 square millimeters. Find its circumference. So first of all, we need the radius, right? So we're saying that 16 square millimeters is equal to pi r squared, which implies that r would be 16 over pi, then the square root of that, right? Therefore, the circumference being equal to 2 pi r would be equal to 2 pi times the square root of 16 over pi, which would be equal to root of 16 over pi, right, times 2 pi. That will give us an answer of 14.2. So 14.2 millimeters would be the circumference of the circle. Okay, so this was simply looking at the circle, how we calculate area, how we calculate perimeter, and as well the circumference. Please feel free to leave a comment, drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.